Considering the most popular Western religion heavily features a man being mutilated in a gruesome public execution, we tend to forget just how hardcore most religions are. That might be due to our habit of hiding it all behind boring buildings, featuring nothing crazier than steeples and stained glass. That's why it's good to appreciate the houses of worship that go out of their way to make it clear just how freaking metal their shit is. Number 1. The Italian chapel with skeletons tangled in metal veins. Imagine you're attending a service at the beautiful Cappella San Severo in Naples when that Italian burrito you had earlier starts attacking your intestines. You scurry away in search of the bathroom and finally end up in an underground chamber that looks suited for your needs. That's when you notice that there are already 2 people there. Those 2 human sculptures have lived beneath the chapel for over 200 years, meaning that they've been creeping people out since way before posing fleshless bodies went mainstream. The male and female pair, dubbed Adam and Eve, used to also include a freaking fetus, but it was either stolen or it escaped on its own and is standing behind you right now. These are the only 2 possibilities. Yet somehow, stolen, decorated fetus skeletons aren't even the freakiest part of this holy site. That honor goes to the so-called black legend of Raimondo di Sangro, the Prince of San Severo, otherwise known as the guy responsible for these anatomical machines. As well as being an alchemist, inventor, Naples' highest-ranked Masonic leader and probably a super fun person to hang with at parties, the prince was also the repository of many disturbing stories. Villagers suspected that he dabbled in the dark arts and had discovered a process of injecting blood vessels to turn them into metal, the implication being that the models for Adam and Eve were 2 house servants that he murdered and turned into large biology class props. To this day, nobody knows what procedure or materials he used in order to preserve the whole circulatory system in such remarkable condition. The creepiness doesn't stop there. The chapel, which is littered in Masonic symbols, also holds the famous Veiled Christ, a statue of post-crucifixion Jesus so disturbingly realistic that, for centuries, everyone assumed the prince had just turned some hippie into stone. Number 2. France's decapitation-themed cathedral. At first glance, there's nothing particularly creepy about Amiens Cathedral unless giant Gothic buildings scare you on principle. In fact, this popular tourist spot is pretty much the only reason to visit the quaint little city of Amiens in northern France, so you might as well take your time in there and bask in the glory of all those magnificent statues of headless zombies. Huh. That's weird. You shrug off the decapitated saints by the entrance, thinking even sculptors make mistakes, but then you walk in and slowly notice that headlessness is definitely a running theme in this place. There's actually a good reason for that. Amiens Cathedral is where the faithful come to gaze at the decapitated head of John the Baptist, violently lost the upper section of his body after a tragic encounter with a horny king and a silver platter. But don't worry, that's not the actual skull of the guy who baptized Jesus, it's only the front half of his actual skull, or so claimed a French knight called Wallen de Sartine in the 13th century when he acquired the half-head after looting a temple in Constantinople. The cathedral was built as sort of an oversized display case for the morbid relic, hence the grisly decoration. In 1793, it was deemed the relic should be given a proper burial, as if parading someone's skull in a bowling ball to gore-hungry tourists wasn't Christian or whatever. But, thanks to a crafty mayor who instead kept it in his house, the Amiens Tourist Board keep their biggest earner on display like a high school football trophy. Number 3. Thailand's Black House is like a giant serial killer's shrine. If Thailand's famous White Temple is like heaven and hell had a terrifying baby, then the Black House is like hell had sex with its own cousin and gave birth to a deformed spawn. Everything about the Black House is insane, starting with the fact that it's not a house, it's actually 15 quasi-religious buildings decorated to resemble a serial killer's burned-down hideout. The place, which officially goes by the action-packed name of Bon Dam, was created by Thawin Dushani, a Thai artist who apparently had a master-mentor relationship with the White Temple's Chalermchai artist. His purpose was to evoke past Thai civilization in a contemporary manner. Apparently, ancient Thailand was way into death metal because this place is painted all black and full of bizarre, intricately arranged animal corpses and weird decorations made from mutilated animal parts. Other decorations include a complete elephant skeleton, unidentifiable blindfolded skulls, and a gigantic crocodile skin painted black and surrounded by candles. And then you have the more traditional Buddhist statues, which showcase a whole other brand of creepiness. All of the 15 buildings are accessible apart from one. A strange submarine structure that lets in just enough light to allow one to view a torture chamber on the inside. As far as we know, the recent earthquake didn't do any major damage on this place, presumably because even natural disasters are afraid to go there. Number 4. Poland's underground cathedral made of salt. An 800-year-old salt mine that's more than 1,000 feet under the ground doesn't immediately sound like a good place to put a cathedral. It would be a much better fit for a supervillain hideout or we don't know, a mining operation maybe. No one told this to the city of Wieliczka in Poland, apparently, so they went and carved themselves a whole subterranean church out of solid salt. The entire cathedral was painstakingly carved into the blackened salt rock. The purest, whitest salt was mined long ago by 3 chronically bored miners in their spare time over the course of 68 years just for kicks. Not content with just crafting floor tiles, stairways, and pillars out of this incredibly brittle material, the miners also sculpted several religious statues, fashioned fancy chandeliers out of polished, reconstituted salt, and even carved a huge and hugely detailed copy of the Last Supper into a wall, because what good is your salt palace if you don't have salt Jesus paintings decorating it? Yes, that's plural. Given the dangerous nature of the miners' jobs, it's not so surprising that they were such a devoted bunch. If there's even a small chance that making a salt sculpture decreases your odds of dying in an underground explosion, then, hey, it's worth a shot. As a result, the tunnels are littered with smaller handcrafted chapels and dozens of creepy historical statues and mythical creatures. It's worth noting that they were probably rife with cabin fever and missing female company a bit too much, so there's a good chance there's a stash of salt wives hidden somewhere. By the way, if you, like the miners, have a lot of spare time on your hands, the whole place is now explorable by Google Street View. Number 5. The gold-encrusted corpses of German churches. We've already told you about plenty of worship rooms that happen to be decorated with people's skeletons, some of them in this very article. What makes Germany's bone-filled churches so special, then? The bling. Oh God, the bling. As documented by Paul Kadaunerus in his book Heavenly Bodies. Cult treasures and spectacular saints from the catacombs, Europe and Germany in particular, had a tendency to keep the bodies of their long-dead Christian martyrs and pimp them out for show. The 3 fellows above are Saint Valerius, Saint Valentin, and Saint Valentinus, and all 3 of them would disagree with 50 Cent about the or part. Their bodies are hollowed, dressed, posed, and blinged to hell and back, giving the impression that the Catholic afterlife is a cross between Cleopatra's Court and the music videos of the world's gaudiest rappers. We're assuming Mr. T has already requested to be buried in the same fashion. While others don't seem too impressed with this whole facing eternity as a fancy church ornament thing. As for the question of who would have the grit, the nerve, and the stomach to undertake the long and grisly task of making these corpses all pretty, the answer is nuns. Alongside embroidering, the nuns have to remove damaged bones and coat them in animal glue and cloth. When you go to sleep tonight, let the last image that enters your mind be a cramped candlelit room full of middle-aged nuns sewing gold leaves into a skeleton's ribcage.